Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Inside the Force. Dave Cottingham here with Cody Geiler. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Good to be back at it again.
Yes. You getting settled in your new place?
Yeah. So for those listening, watching, I moved recently. So, I'm still got boxes surrounding me you can't see here, but I pulled out a few of my Star Wars things to record with. So getting settled now.
Yes, nice. And I do got to apologize for listeners. We did record an episode a couple weeks ago, but I completely messed up on the audio. So I did not think it was worth putting out there. I struggled with it a bit, but it just, in the end, it was a great conversation. We'll have a little bit of that in this episode, but we're moving on, and we'll recap some of the stuff. But in fact, we had a great conversation. Cody, I forgot to mention this before we started going. We had a great conversation centered around Saw Gerrera, and I thought, you know what, instead of rehashing that here, it was actually a perfect, I feel like, council session that we should do later. So look for that coming soon. We'll do a little conversation about Saw Gerrera that I think we did a deep dive in. That was really, really good. So
release the Saw Gerrera cut.
Release the Saw Gerrera cut. Nice. Yeah. It was good. It was good. So we'll redo that and then and put that out there. It had a lot to do with of course, the Andor and, Forrest Whitaker returning back to Andor and showing up in the series Andor that's coming soon. So, but anyway, we'll talk a little bit about the latest news here. Got some big announcements that happened this last couple of weeks. And our main topic in this episode, we're going to kind of not just review, we're not going to review the latest Bad Batch episode, but more or less just kind of talk about where we are with the show right now overall, with some questions and thoughts and stuff like that as we enter into the last 5 episodes coming out, starting with episode 12 out right now this weekend, actually. So let's get going. First off, I do want to talk about, because again, I haven't been on here now since I got back from Disney and my trip to Batu again. So we won't, I don't even remember really what we said going a couple of weeks ago, but I think, it was a great trip. I think Batu, still the same place, although, we went in mid-June, right? And there were still some, restrictions, and they actually lifted the mask restrictions while we were there. So they don't have that right now. But, one thing I do remember, and I remember mentioning then, was it's still not quite the same experience, because when I first walked in there a couple of years ago, back in 2019, you had all these Star Wars characters that were walking around. You had Chewbacca literally like in the middle of the area working on this looked like a comlink tower. You had Rey walking around. You had Kylo Ren walking around with the stormtroopers. You had Vi Marati, if people know, I'm talking about the Resistance character that was created for the books, and she's there, and she's hiding, trying not to be seen by the First Order. I mean, it's fully immersive, and right now, at the time, it was still a little disconnected because you had those characters just kind of standing on balconies and waving to you. It's not really, wasn't really the same thing. So I do miss that part, and it felt less crowded, obviously, because it was less capacity. So it's really buzzing whenever you have full capacity there and all these things. Now, one thing I can add to this that we didn't know then a couple weeks ago, Cody, is that Disney released a picture of the Star Wars hotel, the Star Cruiser. The outside pretty much looks completed. So the inside, I think, is probably going to get to, but it's still confirmed to be released next year. I think that's just going to be an incredible experience.
Is it early 2022 or is it like later?
They just said 2022. So I haven't seen any kind of hints at when, but I'm telling you, it looks like it'll be ready to go by first quarter of next year. So
I mean, it would be pretty great if they had it ready when they have a celebration going on. But
see, and I think you're right. I think there is some kind of tie into that. I think even though Celebration's in California, and they're not doing the hotel in Anaheim, they're doing it at Disneyland, or they're only doing it at Disney World. But I think you're right. I think there's going to be at least some kind of footage and trailer or something like that that'll be released then and say, hey, because I do think it may come out probably mid next year or something like that. But because I'm sure once they even get interior done, they got so many testings to do, like because there's so many interactive components to it that they can't afford to have anything go wrong while people are staying there, because it is an experience. It's not one of the things where like we would go and stay there and then like leave to go to like Magic Kingdom or something. You don't do that while you're doing this experience. You're totally immersed in the Star Cruiser, and you may take a trip to Batuu, but that's about it. And it's going to be interesting to get a feel for that. Now I'm debating on what I've got so many decisions to make next year as far as like Celebration, or my wife wants to take a Disney cruise, so it's like, I mean, I don't know, it's then this hotel thing, it's like
a lot of vacation options.
Yeah. So I don't know what we're gonna do. But yeah, it was a great experience. I think anybody, again, I'll just like Celebration. I'll keep saying, like, if you have an experience, you got to go experience it. It's pretty immersive. It's pretty crazy. And I think, one thing I always say too is, if you go, I don't know how it is in Disneyland. I don't know if it's the same way, but if you go to Disney World, there's two entrances into Batuu, right? You can go to the left of Hollywood Studios and go like around by Star Tours and by where the Muppet 3D is. And then you have this big tunnel that you walk through and you get into Batuu. And then the other way is you go through Toy Story Land and by the roller coaster and the alien saucer rides, and you kind of walk down this path into Batuu. It's not even close. You got to go through the tunnel, because the tunnel just completely changes your perception, and you're walking like you fully look like feel like you're walking out of your world into this world. It is such a cool experience, and they do a great job, because you don't see obviously the rest of the park, right? So you feel like you're just in the middle of this spaceport, and so do that. So whenever you go there, Cody, just make sure you go through the tunnel.
Well, I feel like I got to do that, because I probably want to hit up Star Tours, like for nostalgia's sake. Because before we had Batuu, that was like the only Star Wars, ride there. So it's still nostalgic to me. Even though like the idea of like being in a ride with a screen, I get sometimes a little bit motion sick.
Yeah.
But I used to love doing it as a kid, because they always had the Star Wars toys on the when you get out of the ride.
That's right.
I was like, but yeah, no, I'm looking forward to going to Batuu, and I really want to take my son, as he gets, old enough to kind of handle the whole like Disney experience. So
yeah. It's pretty phenomenal. So, so back from Batuu, and we've got Star Wars to talk about. A couple little bits of news before we get into some major announcements. But one thing I wanted to mention was, it was been revealed that Robert Rodriguez, I think that was the expectation. I think everybody expected this when it was announced, but he was the director in The Mandalorian that brought Boba Fett back to being Boba Fett, right? That phenomenal episode. So he's been highly involved in the Book of Boba Fett. In fact, he's executive producing it with Favreau and Filoni. Of course, I think everybody expected him to direct episodes, if not all of them, technically, of the season, I think. But it has been revealed through an interview with Tamora Morrison that Filoni, Favreau, and Bryce Dallas Howard have done episodes of the Book of Boba Fett. This does seem like it is Mandalorian 2.5, I think. Do you think because of these common directors that it's going to get the same kind of feel?
Oh, I mean, I definitely the same kind of feel. I feel like, they're bringing the band back together, and these are the same crew that's been on Mandalorian season 1. They've had a couple other directors from season 2 that they didn't have on season 1. And I don't know how many, they haven't said how many episodes Book of Boba Fett is. So, we know we got, Favreau, Filoni, Bryce Dallas Howard, and Robert Rodriguez. If they're only doing one, which probably isn't the case, you got 4, maybe Favreau or Robert Rodriguez bookends it. We had those same kind of questions with Mando season 2. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of the same characters because you've got Favreau, Filoni, most likely helping write it. I don't know that they've announced who's writing episodes or all the episodes. No. Maybe it's Favreau again. But yeah, I mean, I feel like with that same crew in mind, you're probably going to see Din, with somebody like Bryce Dallas Howard. You might see Bo-Katan pop back up. She did a great job directing the episode that had her live action debut. So, there's certain characters that I start to associate with these directors when you think about Robert Rodriguez and Boba Fett. So
that's a great point. That's a great point because, it's such a crapshoot on what to expect from this show. There's a rumor out there. Just side note, just reminded me. There's a rumor out there that Ahsoka, the Ahsoka series. I don't know if you saw this, but there was a rumor claiming that the Ahsoka series is they're how do I say it? They're almost wanting her to be the Iron Man of this shared universe series. Like she's going to be the one that actually starts driving these characters towards what she's trying to do, which obviously is trying to find Ezra, right? Thrawn and Ezra. So do these characters like Boba Fett and Din, do they actually, and Bo-Katan or something like that, do they actually start gravitating towards her mission and what she's doing for some reason? Now, I don't know how they get there for that, but and I'm not sure I really believe that rumor, but I do think that they will all cross paths in a way. But I think it's so hard to predict right now, in my opinion, where the show is going to go. I think that these directors, I think if I were to bet, I would say Filoni and Favreau are still kind of shaping this thing and possibly writing this thing. I can't remember. There was different writers for season 2, right?
Yeah, Filoni wrote the Ahsoka episode, and I think, if I recall correctly, Rick Famuyiwa wrote
his. I think you're right,
because he wrote an episode. He wrote 2 for season 1,
right?
And Filoni wrote 1 for season 1,
maybe 2. I think he might 2.
And then Favreau did all the rest. So I bet it'll be a similar thing where Filoni will do an episode or 2. Favreau will probably do 3 or 4, and maybe they'll have Robert. I don't know if he writes as often or if he writes for television and stuff like that. But it's really interesting. I mean, especially thinking about how I bet Favreau wrote a lot, because I don't know if this has ever fully been talked about or released, but in the Art of books of Mandalorian season 1, there's scenes of Mando, bringing Grogu, Baby Yoda, into these where the other Mandalorians are, scene that we didn't really see, and it's kind of reminiscent of Lion King when they hold Simba up. He's like holding it up to show them, but it's Boba Fett. It's not like Mando armor, it's like full Boba Fett like coloring, and there's 1 or 2 other drawings that are straight up Boba Fett. So I bet there was a time where either his first drafts were, hey, I want to do a Boba Fett show. And then they were like, I don't know, conversations, or if it just shifted into it. Like, well, he's actually not there right now. So I wonder if this is like one of the ideas that Favreau had originally. It's like, oh, now that we can include Boba Fett, let's do this. Because they had the movie at the time that Mandalorian... I think was still being developed. The movie was still, maybe it was past that point, but James Mangold was supposed to direct and
that's right,
and work on that. So now that maybe they have a lot more freedom with the character.
Yep. Yeah, and I think I think it's safe to say that since Filoni and Favreau started this whole thing with Mandalorian, it just makes sense that they're going to be the ones that shepherd this series, this show, Book of Boba Fett, and then more than likely they will take on obviously Ahsoka, and could follow the theme of that, with Rodriguez, who was tasked with bringing Boba Fett back, and I guess you could almost be like everybody cheered that, so let's give this character to this guy and see what he can do. And I ultimately think that's what's going to happen with Ahsoka, is that right now no one knows Ahsoka better than Filoni. So I think Filoni is going to be the one that really kind of spearheads that series.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So that, and ultimately that could be season 3.5 of Mandalorian, the way they're kind of doing these things, and unfortunately Rangers doesn't look like it's going to happen. So it might be just these three shows that kind of propelled this into the where's Ezra Bridger question. So
yeah, it'll be interesting. Like, what does Boba Fett have to play into that?
Exactly.
How does he come back into the fold, so to speak, if he's out there sitting on Jabba's throne?
I know, right? It's such a crazy direction, of where that's going to go. But got some great directors and creators behind that. So, speaking of the Mandalorian, some big news that got announced was another episode. I feel like everybody felt a little shortchanged when all we got was one episode of the gallery for season 2, the making of the Mandalorian season 2. But it has just now been announced that they are doing another episode. And this one is the making of the season 2 finale, because in the first making of, there was nothing about the finale with Luke and Grogu taken by Luke and the dark saber and all that stuff that's happened in that episode. So I don't know. I was a little. I guess I was kind of a surprised because it's been so long. Surprised and how excited are you to see this thing?
Yeah, I didn't see this coming. I hadn't heard anybody talk about them doing. I thought they just released that one, longer special, and it was like, okay, we're done with it. So pleasant surprise, and yeah, I can't wait to see. I wonder how much they'll dive into how they. I mean, I think in the blurb they put on social media, it seems like they're going to talk about Luke's involvement, maybe even how they did some of the de-aging type stuff. I wonder, because technology has always been a big part of some of these making of, and I think it seems like Favreau really likes some of this making of type stuff. If he's so heavily involved in he's the creator of this. I like the fact that is important to this series because it gives us a peek behind what they're doing, and you just get to hear some of the passion. And we've heard some of the most interesting kind of sound bites from Filoni about what he thinks about Star Wars and where it's going and the heart of it. So I love getting those kind of nuggets from the people involved. So
I do too. And I remember. If I recall, I remember that season 2 making of didn't have any interviews with Kelly Sackhoff for Bo-Katan. And of course, they didn't have any interview with Hamill about returning, right? So hopefully we see some of those going into this finale and to get their thoughts on everything. And I know it's been highly documented about how Cody had no idea. None of them really had any idea who the Jedi was until they actually came through the door, either when they were filming this thing. So that was pretty neat. But I hope there's that. I hope there's something, either a phone call or on video of that conversation of Filoni calling Luke or calling Mark Hamill and saying "Hey, will you come back and do this?" Because that had to have been a hell of a conversation.
That would be awesome to hear the reaction or see it or something. I want to know too, like, whose idea was it to bring Luke back? And like, I want to know, I want to even know like that conversation. Like, I wonder if it was a Favreau Filoni and it's like, hey, we need a Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
And like how they arrived at it, or if somebody mentioned another Jedi. Because wasn't the Katie Sackhoff interview comment, wasn't it something like she was told that it was Plo Koon?
Yes,
by Filoni?
That's right. That's right.
And it's like, well, I mean, it couldn't be Plo Koon because he died in episode 3, but you know, she was just like, oh, okay, I guess so.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'd be cool to hear some more of that, like, you know, how they had to keep the secret and whose idea it was to really, you know, bring Luke back.
And you know, Dave, it'd be interesting to know whether or not he maybe called George first.
Ooh,
and you know, they're like, hey, I'm thinking about this, what do you think? You know, and of course, you know, Mark's been on record saying he after episode 9 he was done with Star Wars and he wasn't going to come back. And of course, you know, there's always reasons to bring characters like that back. And
hey, no one's ever really gone.
That's
in the words of Luke Skywalker.
That is right. And you could. And Mark is one of those guys where there's no way he would let anybody else do Luke Skywalker. You know, now on camera is one thing, right? I mean, to bring a young Luke back on camera is difficult. But if he has a chance to voice him, I think it's especially live action. I don't think he's not gonna. I think he's gonna pass that up. It's too important to him. So anyway, that season 2 finale. Making of drops August 25th, of course, exclusively on Disney Plus. So we calculated that's about a week and a half after the finale of the Bad Batch. So makes sense that they're going to keep releasing some Star Wars content. And speaking of Star Wars content, Star Wars Visions, which we knew was coming out, that was one of the series announcements in Investor Day last year. So we knew what was coming out. We knew it was an anime-based style series. What we didn't know is whether or not it was all connected as far as like episodic. And we do know now that they are independent stories, and we're getting 8 episodes on Disney Plus, starting I think in September. Is that
September 22nd, I believe.
You're right, September 22nd. So shortly after about a month after the gallery releases that episode, you'll get Star Wars Visions. And the story behind this really is Lucasfilm, expanding to, I think it's 7 studios that do this kind of animation work. To create 9, I said 8, but actually it's 9 shorts for dubbed Star Wars Visions. So 2 of the studios are doing 2, but there's 7 studios involved in making this series. So real quick, the titles of these are, one is called The Duel, and then you've got Lop and Ocho. You've got Tatooine Rhapsody. You got The Twins, The Elder, The Village Bride, Akakiri, TOB1, and then The Ninth Jedi. And then we'll talk about this a little later, but there's also a novel coming out called Ronin that is based on the Duel short film. So anyway, we've got these, Cody. What do you think about them? I mean, what's your initial reaction to kind of hearing all this information that was released?
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, I'm not well versed in anime, just up front, but yeah. I think the art is super interesting, so I'm into that. Always think it's cool when there's new Star Wars content, especially animated, and the fact that they're going into even a different genre than where, like, Clone Wars Bad Batch has kind of lived. I think it's going to reach potentially more fans, newer fans of anime that maybe aren't as into some of the other animated content. So I think it's super interesting. I mean, at first glance, some of the ones that caught my eye are, obviously the Tatooine Rhapsody, because it seems like they're going to bring back Boba Fett. And the art style of that kind of looked interesting to me. And then there was, I think it's the one called The Elder, is about a master and his apprentice. And I think they end up facing off with like a Sith. So that seemed interesting from a story point of view to me. But yeah, no, I'll definitely check these out. I think it seems like they're going to be shorts, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't know how short. I don't know if they've mentioned runtimes for each.
I haven't seen any, but I haven't seen any. I would venture to guess. I mean, I could be anywhere between 10, 15 minutes, I would think, but maybe longer. I wouldn't imagine maybe they're 30 minutes a piece. I don't know. It could be. But you're right. I think I'm curious if the twins means the Skywalker twins. Actually, there's a description. I haven't read these though.
I think the twins was actually interesting. It was like I think it's like a riff off of the Skywalker twins, where they're on the dark side though.
Yeah, you're right. It says it subverts the idea of Luke and Leia imagines a brand new set of twins born into the dark side, and how far the brother will go to save his sister. This is even represented visually with a co-joined Star Destroyer. The Elder, however, takes a closer look at another kind of Star Wars bond. The Elder is a homage to classic Star Wars Master and Padawan relationship, like you were talking about. So here's the thing, too, is it sounds like and I've read a little bit of the fuss on social. It sounds like these stories may not be canon. And Lucasfilm hasn't said whether or not they are or not. They have said that they are giving these creators basically full story creative creative direction. Like they're leaning on these creators to just tell good stories and not necessarily worried about where this lands on the timeline of Star Wars. So I don't know. Does that change your opinion on this thing at all?
It doesn't change my opinion. I think it's actually, I mean, some people I think, like the idea of everything being canon, and I think it's great. And I think they've done a great job with it. But in some of the material that's maybe outside of the like saga movies and maybe now even, Disney Plus shows that are seemingly interconnected, I think it serves the individual stories better to not always have to put it in a specific time and place.
Yeah.
Because like, for instance, I mean, even like on like some of the video game side, right? It's like, okay, they make this Fallen Order is a great game about a Jedi, but it's like you have to put it in these certain boxes, right? You can't just have Cal Kestis running around in other eras because like it would have potentially blown wrinkles into what's, what else is going on. So, they did a good job there working within the parameters of the canon, I think. But I feel like there are boxes that the novel writers and comic writers can be put into because of the interconnectivity. So I would welcome what they're doing here with Visions in other, different media, right? In books and things like that. I think it's what I enjoyed out of the EU, where, okay, tell a great story. Okay, that story's great. Well, it could be canon if they want to continue using it in other formats, but it also doesn't have to, mean that this other thing can't happen. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I kind of like that idea that they just let them do the story and tell what they wanted to tell.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, but I think I'm definitely on the side that I love the fact that we're dealing with the main timeline. Have you seen Loki yet?
The sacred timeline?
The sacred timeline. Yeah, the sacred timeline. Not the main timeline, the sacred timeline. It's funny because when I was watching that show and it came brought up, I'm like, oh man, that's Star Wars, the sacred timeline. But I'm for that, right? I love the fact that, and honestly, that's one of the main reasons I didn't 100% dive into the expanding universe back in the 90s and the early 2000s, because I had always heard George say, they're great stories, but they're not stories I'm telling, right? They're not stories that Lucasfilm was telling. We're letting creators kind of do. I mean, there was, it was weird because novels that came out then, stories that came out then, they had effects. They affected each other, right? If when, God, spoilers, in Legends, but when Chewbacca got killed, right? I mean, he wasn't in any stories beyond that time when he got killed, right? So they had an impact on each other. It just didn't impact what was happening in the movies, right? Mm-hmm. So ultimately, when Disney, did what we did, everybody knows that they reset all that. So, and I liked that. I liked knowing that, 10, 15 years after Return of the Jedi, this happened. But I will say that, so I like the idea that you're given this creative freedom of letting these creators go out and tell these types of stories. And I don't really care how it's designed, like how it's described. For example, we'll get into it a little bit right now, is that the Ronin novel coming out, right? It's based off The Duel, and The Duel is it seems like it's very wrapped up into the Japanese culture of samurai, right? So I love that part of it. I love a Sith that's walking around. It looks like a samurai. I mean, that's really cool to me. I just hope and wish, which I don't know if they're doing this, but I just wish they would say, okay, look, this story happened 10,000 years before episode 1. But how it's designed, and if they wanted to make the galaxy seem like it was set in, part of Japan and it was, samurai related kind of things, totally fine with that. Because to me, stuff like that is up to interpretation, right? Like how you tell a story that happens 10,000 years ago and describe it could be different than how I describe it. But the essence of the story is canon, like what happens, what these characters do, how these characters evolve, what decisions they make, like that's canon. The way things are described, how they talk, how they look, like that part I can get behind, and I can understand that can change based on who's telling the story from their point of view, right? So, I just wish that. I just wish that each one of these stories had a place on the sacred timeline. But they could be, it could be interpreted different ways. Does that make sense?
I feel like maybe with Lucasfilm not saying specifically, maybe they're allowing for, if one of them does become popular, successful, then they can make more content, right? Maybe then the book or a follow-up book can have its place, because like you're saying, The Duel, specifically this Ronin novel, in a more like feudal Japan sort of era, if you had to equate it to like a real world time period, could predate the Old Republic, right? Like if you wanted to place it on the Star Wars, sacred timeline, you could say Old Republic happens here, this many years before Episode 1, and then just say, well, now we've got High Republic. Yeah, that's kind of the in between. But High Republic, Old Republic, and then you could go with what's going on in these visions, Ronin sort of time. So I could see that like actually fitting in. And yeah, I mean, nobody's telling anything that's before the Old Republic that I know of. No. I don't even think there was any much in Legends material. But it does seem like there's a few stories in here that are a little bit more of the like if you had to equate it to like a what if scenario. Of like if twins that maybe aren't Skywalkers were on the dark side, because it seems like they're using Star Destroyers in one of those descriptions and some of the artwork. So that one obviously probably won't fit anywhere because there were never two twins that were dark side the Empire that we know of in canon.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, maybe, I do like the fact that, there was a book, there's a couple books that have come out, written by George Mann. One was called Myths and Fables, I think. And then the other one's called Dark Visions, I think, maybe, where I haven't read them or listened to them, but, they're stories that are out there in the galaxy, right? And a story meaning they could be true or they could not be true. And it could just be someone like a father telling his son, a story. I mean, if you look at it that way, sure. You can tell any Star Wars story at that point, right? It doesn't really matter because you're just, being a creator at that point, right? So if you look at it that way, that's you can do anything, and it doesn't have to be canon, and it doesn't necessarily have to be legends either, right? Because legends means it happened in a different timeline, or something like that, or a different universe, but not in this timeline. But this timeline could be just someone telling a story at a bar or at a telling their kids a bedtime story or something like that. But so I can get behind that. But I'm with you. I never really got into anime. My daughter is actually into it. She's really big into The Last Airbender and Pokemon and there's shows like that she's been watching. So I know she'll probably be really excited about it. I know Hannah, who does Beyond the Saga with me, is very into anime, so she's pumped about this. So, but I think you're right. The bottom line, I think it's going to possibly attract a lot of fans that necessarily weren't Star Wars fans, but they're anime fans, and I think this could get them into introducing them into this kind of world with this kind of stuff. So
yeah, definitely.
So anyway, Star Wars Visions, that's dropping this year, and it seems like this is the only other series we're going to get prior to the Book of Boba Fett, which is the other last series we'll get this year, starting in December. So, so a lot of stuff, a lot of things that came out this year, mainly in the novels and comics and stuff like that. But we do have some series that's been dropping. Basically, what I'm saying is that all that huge announcement we got from Investor Day with all these series, we still have a lot coming. Andor, Obi-Wan. Of course, I don't know how much the pandemic affected these series, possibly, but I don't know if we would have gotten anything that quicker. I think Obi-Wan would have gotten a little quicker. I think that was possibly, there was rumors that was ready to shoot last summer, but got pushed back a little bit. So, but yeah, next year seems like it's going to be the year we get just like Andor and Obi-Wan, and if there's another Bad Batch season and possibly Ahsoka, I don't know. It's crazy, but we are getting. Wait, is the movie 2023 Rogue Squadron?
2023.
Yeah. Gosh, man. Yeah. So we got 2.5 years for that still.
Still a little bit.
Anyway. All right. So that is, so we did talk about Ronin a little bit, which is coming out. It's a novel that is coming out October 12th. That actually got a cover too. That looks great. Just another announcements on the novel side. Wave 2 of the High Republic pretty much kicked off with some new books that came out. Mainly the one right now everybody's kind of raving about was written by Cavan Scott, called The Rising Storm, that came out last week. So go get that. There's other comics that have come out for the High Republic. Out of the Shadows comes out July 27th. Continuing the Wave 2, I mentioned Ronin. You've got Queen's Hope, which is the third book in the Queen Padme series, written by E.K. Johnson. That drops November 2nd. And then November 16th is a third Thrawn Ascendancy book called Lesser Evil, written by Timothy Zahn. And then comics, you still got the War of the Bounty Hunters going on out there with a bunch of tie-ins. You got Jabba the Hutt tie-in comic coming this next week, July 21st. Darth Vader 14, July 24th is a tie-in. You've got High Republic number 7 coming out July 28th, and then Star Wars 15, which is also still tying into War of the Bounty Hunters July 28th. So I'm a little behind. I got to catch up, but I have read some of that War of the Bounty Hunter stuff. I don't know if you've caught it any more over the last few weeks, Cody.
Just the War of the Bounty Hunters issue 1, not the tie-ins yet.
Yeah. So lots that I'm sure that will get revealed in that, like you said, War number 1 dropped a big bomb that Kira was back. So I'm sure they're gonna do some more of that kind of stuff as that series goes on. Okay, so let's move on to the Bad Batch, because that is the current series that is out right now on Disney Plus from Star Wars. Several episodes have gone by over the last couple of weeks that we haven't really reviewed, so we'll kind of hit on those a little bit here and there. But we have seen 11 episodes now. Episode 12 will be coming out here this weekend. But Cody, after 11 episodes, I don't know. First, kind of overall question is how are you feeling about the series in general? 11 episodes, is it what you expected? Is it better than what you expected? Where are you feeling like as far as what you've seen so far?
Yeah, let's see. So 11 episodes in, I feel like the Bad Batch started. The premiere really did start with a bang. Like, I did not expect a lot of the things that they did. Obviously, they brought in Caleb Doom, Jedi involvement, Order 66 stuff was great. I feel like they haven't been able to hit that moment that they did in the premiere for me yet, 11 episodes in. Like, I really liked the Cad Bane centric episodes. I thought they really raised the stakes because Omega got taken. I really love that they went there. But there, there's one or two, the Separatist Senator mission where they kind of left Omega on the ship. People always get up in arms about the filler and not filler. Is it important? Is it going to matter later? Look, there's episodes that are filler. No offense to the people that wrote it and made it. That episode was totally filler. Mando season 2, episode 2 was totally filler. We didn't need it. There's certain episodes that just do that, right? And take or leave it. So, with the season this long, I feel like you end up getting some filler episodes. So I feel like they're in that, they were kind of rising up with the Bounty Hunter episodes. They kind of had a little dip down, and I was interested to see Hera come back. And I'm hopeful that they can end it where they started off with the premiere. I think it's what I expected, but maybe I was wrong to expect there would be some other Force involvement. Like, I expected it to be a show about the Bad Batch, right? It's what they literally told us it was. I expected them to go on missions and do their, Bad Batch thing where they each have a skill and work together. But for some reason, I expected some kind of Force involvement. I thought Omega was going to have that. I was totally wrong, at least so far. I don't think there's any hope for that anymore. I don't know. And I feel like that's maybe a hole that they're missing. So, that's where the premiere had us, is like, oh, wow, we got to see Jedi fighting. It felt like Clone Wars again. So I want to see more of that if possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think, I still think it's inevitable. I think with Filoni involved, I still think there is some aspect of the Force is going to make its way. So I'm with you. I don't think we have seen the last of the Force, and whether or not it's I don't think it's any, like you said, though, I don't think it's Omega, and I don't think it's anything with the Bad Batch, but I think it's going to involve a Jedi. I think it's possible you get Caleb back. We already went to Braca. I think it's possible you get a Cal Kestis involved because he was there. at the time, even though he's young, but he was there. Or Ahsoka, still is obviously able to come back, because I think that's inevitable too. I've definitely liked where we've gone, just because I haven't expected this. I tell you what, I've been really intrigued and drawn in by how the Empire has made the transition, and trying to convince everybody that this is the greatest thing for you, that the Republic is now the Empire, and we're going to leave all these stormtroopers here to protect you. And, don't look over here, because we're just going to start taking your resources. So it's like, I really like seeing how the Empire is making their way throughout the galaxy, and informing these people of how they're going to start doing business, right? That's been really interesting to me, more so than what we're currently seeing out of the Bad Batch. In fact, we only saw one scene of the Bad Batch in this last episode, and which was weird, but it still kept me interested, because again, I did like the story, even if it wasn't Hera, even if it was, I do like that story of the Empire again trying to manipulate their way into these systems. So I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see where this goes. The Crosshair thing totally took me by surprise. Like, I did wonder about the chips. I think everybody kind of wondered how the chips affected them during Order 66, and we obviously saw that they didn't, except Crosshair, and the Empire did that to make him turn against his brothers. But I don't know. I would say if my expectations for this show, was, I was expecting a lot. So my expectation was probably a 9, and I'm probably hovering around a 7 right now, as far as where I'm at. But yeah. Is that where you would be, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, my expectation maybe was lower.
Oh, okay.
And then, like, when the premiere hit, I was like, oh, wow. And it drove maybe some of those future expectations up a little bit, of where I was kind of, thinking the show would go. And so I think I'm somewhere in that, like, 7 range, where, like, I like generally all the episodes.
Yeah.
And I like some a lot. Like when Rex came in, I thought the season was I thought it was just going to take off from there. And so he kind of left, and I was just kind of left. It's that typical moment in a season where it's like, oh, do you really have to split up the most interesting character from, that's what I want to see, is I just want them to all solve this chip issue and just keep going up. But, they gotta stretch it out a little bit and kind of tease us. So I get that.
So with, of course, being Filoni, being involved, and this truly feeling like, it's funny, they say Book of Boba Fett's season 2.5. I mean, this is season 8 of the Clone Wars, technically. So you knew, that I've had this feeling watching this series that, you have these characters that he's introduced us to in the Clone Wars, Ahsoka and Rex and Cad Bane and Asajj, and unfortunately Asajj at this point is but you have these great characters that we've met in the Clone Wars. He wasn't able to complete the Clone Wars, I'll say that, because he was able to finish the Clone Wars, but it fully wasn't completed because there's still stories to tell. But you jump forward, and he's able to make Rebels, and we get introduced to a whole new batch of characters. Kanan, Ezra, and Hera, and Zeb, and Sabine, and of course he brought characters back into that series, because it almost felt like since he didn't finish the Clone Wars, he had to finish those stories, right? In Rebels, Rex and Ahsoka mainly, and even Darth Maul. But now that he's able to go back in time and continue the Clone Wars in a sense, right? he's able to not only bring characters to finish their stories in this from Clone Wars, but he's also now able to bridge that gap and connect it to Rebels, as we have seen in this last episode with the introduction of Hera Syndulla at a young age and her parents. So I don't know, do you feel like bringing these familiar characters has really heightened your interest in the show, or would you rather see newer characters beyond just the Bad Batch?
I do think the familiar characters have brought my interest, like piqued my interest more. Obviously Caleb Dune, Kanan, and Balaba in the beginning, that was like, oh wow, I did not expect them to go there. I honestly didn't think there were going to be Jedi in the first episode, let alone a lot of the series. There's certain ones. Cad Bane's interesting. Bounty hunters, I feel like, are always, really interesting. Hera, while she isn't necessarily like my favorite character, I've liked how they've almost kind of made a little bit of her backstory line up with where, because she's going to meet up with Kanan and they're going to start, what goes on to be Rebels, and part of it's told in the book with them. But he's on the run from the clones and has this really negative experience with clones, and now she is sort of getting shaped by the clones and the Empire, and kind of on the run, and so to speak. And we'll see what happens with her next. So, I think the familiar characters, like it did in Mandalorian, it definitely draws my interest a little more. Omega is growing on me a lot, but I'm almost more interested in where Omega is going to go than Omega right now, as like a new character. So if they did introduce, some of the Imperial officers are new characters, and to me, I'm like, they could be anybody,
Right.
But yeah, I like Omega. I really want to see, like, did she survive all the stuff that we're in, present day, or Mando timeline, the Book of Boba Fett? Like, I'm like, wow, that would be super interesting. A clone sort of quasi sister that's out there, and if she survived this long, she's got to be just as capable as Boba Fett. So,
are there any familiar characters that you want to see or you expect to see? Not maybe this season, but it's maybe in season 2 or something.
Yeah, this season, I don't know if they'll go there, but name dropping Boba and the fact that it's a series about clones, all the Bad Batch are clones, and Omega being a unaltered clone now that we know, I think that's inevitable.
Yeah.
I think he can really rival her because they'll be, similar age, I assume. He doesn't want to have anything to do with the identity of a clone, and she is, kind of growing up with these clones.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to see that. I don't know that goes anywhere past like a couple episode, 2 episode involvement, because Boba's kind of got to go off and do his own thing. He's not going to become a good guy and, jump in with the crew. And then obviously I'd love to see Ahsoka. I think that's, like you said, if they can bring in her story with Rex and sort of tee up what we're going to see later. I know they've been able to retcon books, so I know there may be potentially some timeline stuff with her novel that they may have to work out. But I think if they can bring in the Force and a Jedi, a lot more people are going to want to watch this on a week-to-week basis.
I'm with you. I think for me, I think it's inevitable that someone like Ahsoka shows up. I think that the Force aspect with Filoni is going to happen. Again, piggyback off of what I said about the Empire, from day one, I had this feeling that we were going to get some of those seeds of the rebellion, to kind of make that connection to Rebels. So I fully expected, and it probably will happen still, I think, is people like Bail Organa and Mon Mothma, we got Hera, we got her family, because I think that was a little part of that rebellion, because we still see Cham in Rebels. He's still fighting against the Empire. We already saw Saw Gerrera and how that starts, that rebellion, and honestly, seeing that dynamic that we learn about in Rogue One, about that separation between ideals of what the Mothma stands for versus what Saw Gerrera stands for, right? The two methods of fighting back of this empire. And I think we're going to see a lot of that. And I think this last episode, which was interesting, I think it gave us a little bit of a glimpse of telling these other stories without having the Bad Batch in them. I mean, do you think we're going to get more of these episodes like this where we actually only see them for a scene or two and they're not really that relevant to the story?
I wouldn't have thought so before this week because, it's just called the Bad Batch. But if it follows more of the Clone Wars model, or even looking at Rebels, they had whole episodes where they'd kind of split the crews up. Okay, Zeb and whoever, Zeb and Ezra are going to go over here, and you only see Kanan and Hera when they get back to the ship or something. So it's likely. I don't know. I wonder if, I don't think it would be a season 1 thing, but I wonder if you could ever have Omega split off from them.
Right.
I know Hunter is very protective over her, and even Wrecker and the whole crew, but could she spend some time with a Rex or somebody else or whoever, another mentor for an episode or an arc or something like that? It could be interesting. And yeah, we could totally have, I think your idea about Mon Mothma and Bail, I think that could be like a season 1 sort of resolution type thing even.
Right.
That we talked about the seeds of the rebellion a lot, and they're laying them here. It could be cool to see, are the Bad Batch pretty integral into that whole thing starting?
And I think that was Rex's hinting a little bit, that the fighting is still going on, and a lot of it's done behind the scenes right now, and trying to figure out what to even do with it. Because again, it's pretty cool for me to see how the Empire begins and integrates into the galaxy. So it'd be interesting to see the very early stages of the rebellion and how they decided to do that. And another agreement with you is I think it's inevitable that Boba Fett gets in this. He comes to this series. I mean, I think that's, even though he's young, but he's very established, as we've seen in the Clone Wars. He's very much the Boba Fett we know about. And there's that storyline from the Bad Batch that was unfinished between him and Cad Bane. So there's definitely introduction or a conclusion there with them that could still possibly happen, and we've already seen Cad Bane, so definitely could see that coming. So okay, well that's where we are so far. I mean, I think it's safe to say we're both excited to see how this finishes out this first season.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I can't wait. I mean, what I feel like Lucasfilm Animation does really well is they, especially in 3 episode arcs, you think about it was the series finale of the Clone Wars, but they put so much care into constructing that. They had other episodes that are great, but the premiere of the Bad Batch had a little more special attention, right? It was 70 minutes long. I don't know if we're going to get another 70-minute episode for the finale, but because of what they did to start it off, I hope that they finish it with a bang.
Yeah. I feel like the finale is going to be a 2-parter though, because I think the last 2 episodes are just labeled finale right now. They don't have titles right now, so I think it's going to be one of the things where it's going to be a cliffhanger until the final episode, and who knows, it might be a cliffhanger until the next season, but they usually don't do that. They usually have a good conclusion, come to a good conclusion. So we'll see. Just 5 episodes left, and we'll be here talking about those. So come back to us every week now. We'll be back in the swing of things here. Hopefully very soon. You might see us sitting in the same room again here soon. So you never know as things get slowly back to normal. But we'll obviously take it easy and make sure we're safe and all that stuff. But this is going to be fun to get back into. Even though I think this is kind of the way that shows are starting to do. I mean, everybody's doing this kind of thing online and all that stuff, so it makes it very easy. But
I'm vaccinated, so
yeah, and we're very close to each other. It's not like you have to travel across town anymore to to hang out with me. So
right, I could just ride a bike up or walk up. I need to get a bike first, but
yeah, exactly. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us again. Go check out The Bad Batch, and we'll be back next week to talk about that and all the other Star Wars news. Cody, as always, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend and start of next week, and we will be back to talk Star Wars again. Take care. Have a good one. May the Force be with you.